Sesca, mi querida, eres bienvenida a quedarte, aunque todavía nos queda una hora y tenemos dos más invitados, o adelante te puedes desconectar en cualquier momento. Thank you very much.
Sí,
And
me
now
voy.
I'll be switching now to English because now it is time for me to introduce our third guest. I saw him. Oh, there you are. Hi, Mr. Jenkins. I couldn't see you. There you are. Hi. Let me share with you a little bit about Mr. Jenkins. There you go. Correct me if I am wrong, Mr. Jenkins, please. This is my friend, Mr. Glyn Jenkins. He has undergraduate studies in the University of Manchester. He is from England. He will tell you a little bit about himself in a minute. And his undergraduate studies were in performing arts, business, and information technology. And he has a master's degree in education. Even though he is from England, he is working currently in the United States. And as I had already shared with many of you guys, I think it is very important that Mr. Jenkins shares with us how was this situation, culturally speaking, being from England and moving to the United States. He moved first into New York, I think, which is a culture of its own, and now he lives in Washington State. So, as I already mentioned, Mr. Jenkins, these are our students, these are our undergraduate students in business, and I believe they actually do have many questions for you as well. So if you can start sharing with us some of your experience, that will be wonderful. Thank you very, very much, and welcome. Welcome to our class.
Hi, thank you so much. Well, buenos dias, and that is about all of my Spanish, so please forgive me, but no, I know un poco, I know a little bit more, but I'm not going to risk any more than that. So yeah, my name's Glyn Jenkins. You can call me Glyn, and yeah. So my story: I moved to the US. I grew up in England, in Manchester, in England. So any soccer fans, if there's any soccer fans here, which I'm sure there must be, then there are no soccer fans, no soccer, no one plays soccer, no, really.
My students are nerds, so they're not so much into sports. They're all nerds and geeks.
Okay. Well, if you've heard of Manchester United, then this conversation is going to be very short because I'm a Manchester City fan. So you'll notice that I have a bit of a sense of humor. And if you haven't noticed that, that's what it was. So one thing I always found really, really powerful growing up and as an adult is being able to find things to have a laugh about, to not everything can be serious all of the time. Okay. We're not built for that. And our systems, our hearts, our brains, our emotions, we can't do serious all the time, but we can't do the same thing all the time anyway. We can't be the Joker all the time. We can't be relaxed all the time. We have to move between different states of emotion and different mindsets. So that, I think, is, if I was going to talk from a global perspective, wherever you go in the world or whatever you're going to do, bear in mind there's always time to have a chuckle about that. A chuckle means a giggle, have a laugh about something. Okay, find the fun in it. If there's no fun in something, maybe that's something not to be into. Yeah, there's got to be some element of fun or satisfaction in what you do. So I found that growing up to be, and that's a very English thing anyway. So I don't know if you're not into soccer, maybe Netflix or anything like that, British comedies. Britain is kind of renowned for its goofy British comedy approach, and it's very different to US comedy. And so moving to the US in 2007, which was about 13 years ago, well, it was 13 years ago, in fact, it was October 29th, so it was just over 13 years ago. I missed my anniversary of being here. So I've been here like 13 years and 2 weeks, I guess. Moving to New York, moving from a small rural village in England to a city that has 7 million people as its population, is a bit of a life change, bit of a culture shock. moving from I'm a teacher, moving from a school that was one of the poorest schools in the country, one of the poorest areas, working with kids who looked like me when I grew up, because I grew up pretty poor and pretty, not the word privilege, which I'll come to in later on, is an interesting word to hear in the US, because we only ever heard the word underprivileged. We never heard the word privileged. Everything was, oh, we didn't have these privileges or these privileges. And the fact was, I never met anyone who did have privileges. They were always on TV, or they drove past in a Rolls Royce, maybe. You might see someone with money, but I was never in a circle of privilege. We just never talked about that. So moving to New York, one of the wealthiest, opulent cities in the world, is a really interesting thing when you go to a place like that, because it's a balance of people will help you, but no one's going to do anything for you, right? You've got to do it yourself. You've got to go with your own plan, and you've got to have your own strategies, and you've got to have your own goals, and all of these things that no one ever taught to me about when I was a kid, that I found out about later in life, that if I knew them, I want to say as a kid, I don't mean as your age, I mean as a kid, I mean as a high school kid, as a middle school kid, if I knew about goals and strategies and how to actually put a plan in place and just achieve just lots of small achievements, baby steps, all of those kind of things. And I teach that as much as I teach content to my fifth graders now, which are 10 years old. I teach that as much as anything else about just take that next step. There's a classic saying that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And the breaking everything down to being really small, even in what is probably the largest city in the world, you have to keep it real. You have to keep everything as it's human. Don't dehumanize the process. You're a human being. Everyone around you is human. And if there's one takeaway from anything I'm going to talk to you today, it's not even my takeaway. It's something I got from someone else. It's everyone feels as however you feel at a time. Sometimes you feel great, sometimes you feel nervous, sometimes you feel like you don't belong, sometimes you feel pathetic. Every other human being feels that. Even when they don't look like it, when you're walking in a room, or you're walking down a street, or you're walking on Fifth Avenue, or wherever you are, everyone is going through that personal battle of, am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Do I fit in? Or everyone gets it. We always feel we're the only, that the whole world is like the Truman Show. I don't know if you know that movie, but it's like a preconceived world that everyone else is part of and you're not part of it. Yeah. Do you ever get that feeling? Does anyone? I do a bit of interaction. I get that feeling like I'm the one that's left out, and the other 7 billion people were all in on the act, right? It's absolutely not, right? It's not. And wherever you go, you are going to bring something to the table that impresses someone, that someone's going to like, and just make sure and develop that in yourself. What piece of magic, if you like, and it's to you, it might not be magic, but to someone else, it might be. What piece of little bit of wisdom, or a little bit of creativity, or a little bit of spark that's a little bit different does someone notice when you walk in the room? And be aware that people will be looking for that. They're not going to be seeing, oh, there's a guy who doesn't belong in this room. They don't even belong in this building. That's not the case. And I'm just going to go back to a quote from a famous, in the US, a famous television producer whose name's Shonda Rhimes. Please look her up. She produced Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. So these are 2 huge television shows. This lady she's an African-American lady. She's, if we're going to go into money and business, she's succeeded. She's wealthy. Okay. She's millions and millions. And she works hard, and she's developed her craft. She's developed what she does. She can write, and she can produce, and she didn't do it all in one day. You know, she took the baby steps to get there. And one thing that she says is that no matter what room you are sat in, you belong in that room, and you have to know you belong in that room. So, Miss Sandoval, is it okay if I talk a little bit about being a male or a female, or being a white person as opposed to a person of color? And that,
Yes,
you know,
of course.
so clearly I'm a white male. Okay. I know the lighting is a little bit suspect in my house, but I am white. I look a bit red, and but I'm white, and I'm male, and I'm English speaking. So moving to the US, one of the big cultural shocks for me was how that made me such a horrible individual. That's how you made to fit. That's how I was made to feel. That's not the case, but the messaging that comes across is everyone's in a box. The big US thing about moving to the US is they will put you in a box, and that is you're female, you're straight, you're gay, you're transgender, you're Latinx, you're or Latin America. And Miss Sandoval and I have talked about the Latinx conversation. Even that, the fact that if you're from Mexico now, you've probably gone through 3 different name changes based on your identity, baffles me. How you are what you are, right? Let's get into the real roots of the world. Take business, take politics, take everything out of it. You are the human being that you are. And the thing that is difficult in the US for me is to keep up with the name changes, the changes in terminology. And yeah, it might be progressive, but I'm not even. It's as though it doesn't get. It's like we're in the process all the time of churning out different terms for people, and the values that are the perceived values that people are being told they should have for certain people. So being a white male, it's, you know, we have a thing called freedom. We used to have a thing called freedom of speech in the US, and I'm not sure we do anymore, because it gets shut down a little bit. You can't, and it's not that you can't say what you want to say. What I find difficult is that you can't even get into a conversation that slightly disagrees with someone's point of view. And Ms. Sandoval and I talked a little bit. Obviously, we've had an election. We're still having an election. I don't know what's going on with the election. So I'm a green card holder. I don't vote, so I don't have a political standing in the US. As in, I don't have people that I've grown up with, and I have not been indoctrinated into the 2-party system that the US has adopted or developed. And, you know, you've probably, you know, you all know who Donald Trump is, right? You've all heard his name. You've seen him on the press, you know. But let's just, you know, there's a guy. So, and there's no defense. There's no defense, and I'm not going to be offending or defending anyone here, okay? But there's a man who was president of the US for 4 years, and in all reason, there is no way any human being can be 100% wrong 100% of the time. It's not possible, right? As they say, a broken clock is even right twice a day. Okay, so you can't be wrong 100% of the time. So let's just say the media report something, and I remember the disinfectant issue. I don't know if you were aware of this. About 6 months ago, the media said, Donald Trump says you should all inject yourself with bleach. And I woke up to this news. I woke up to it, and I'm reading it on Facebook, and I'm going, what? Who's it? I read CNN. Well, you know, as an academic, you don't read CNN. So, you know, you would never quote CNN or Fox News. You know, they're just not academic sources. And I then went to the actual briefing where Donald Trump was speaking, and there was nowhere in that thing he said about disinfecting. I understood how they interpreted it to sell their newspapers. So but I couldn't even say to people I was working with, he didn't say that, right? And here's the video to show he didn't say it. It wasn't worth it, because as soon as I say he didn't say that, I guess what? I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a racist. I'm a bigot. I'm a misogynist. I'm everything to do with Donald Trump. If I do anything to ever challenge anything so that level of thinking is really difficult to contend with, especially in this very democratic, progressive area of the US where I live. Ms. Sandoval, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question because I think this is a very, very interesting point. Most of our students have probably been to the United States on vacation, maybe. Most of us have traveled around, etc. But this situation you're describing right now, I think we don't get to see in our business books, in which what you mentioned is we need to be very careful with whatever we want to say, even in a business environment, because everything we say nowadays in the United States might offend somebody. And I think this is a very important point that I really hope all of us, dear students, are aware of. Because here in our class, we talk a lot about being open-minded to different perspectives and visions and point of view, etc. However, what you're describing right now, it's a world that we are not used to yet, because our students are just to do business and actually travel to the States or actually do business with American people. But this issue, it's huge. I don't know, students, if there's anything that you would like to say about this situation on the being careful about what to say. And I don't know if you have any questions also for Mr. Jenkins. I think this is a very interesting point. Students, I need to see your hands. What do you think? What's your opinion? Okay, no opinions. All right, keep going, Mr. Jenkins, then keep going. Yes, go ahead, Paulo, go ahead.
Well, I think there is truth in what Glyn is saying. I think it's okay. There are some people that have their own ideas and respect and have their own criteria, but I also feel that we've gotten to a point where there's more, where the reaction of what someone will say is more thought out than really what people will be like, okay, he's telling me this because of this. I think people are now like, you hear this word and there's an immediate reaction, and you're supposed to react that way because because that is bad. You're not supposed to think that way. I think it's something like that. What Glyn is saying is very, very true.
Okay, can you hear me now? Am I unmuted?
But you have your microphone muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I think we can hear you. Sorry, thank you, Michelle. What I was saying, Glyn, could you please also, we have talked about this, and I have always thought that this is huge. You have told me that when you grew up in England, you didn't have this vision or perspective of he's black, he's not white, and also about gender. I think we have talked about in our conversations about how, for example, women here in our country are seen as lesser of a value. And you have explained this to me, and it's very hard for me to understand because you come from a culture in which this is not even an issue. You know, can you tell us about this? I think this is very important.
So there's a few things. So, and again, a lot of it all comes down to personal experience. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Okay, it comes down to personal experience, you know, and experience is a fun word. I'm going to use the word fun. It's interesting, right? You make your own experiences. We learn from experiences. We have bad experiences. They're the ones you learn from, by the way, apparently, right? But you'll have good experiences and you'll realize so my experiences, it doesn't matter where I've lived, they're going to be different to everyone else. And everyone in this room has different experiences. You'll have a lot of shared similar ones, but you're different. Yeah. And the way you, and Paulo, the way you just explained that, the way people react to something automatically takes them in a particular path, right? Not life-changing, but the way we think and perception is so important. As in critically important. Perception, because perception and point of view leads to critical thinking. And if you haven't got your own perception, solid perception that you can actually say, well, I heard this and I heard this and I heard this, and that's the picture I'm creating, that's the perception I'm creating for myself. I am getting to your question, Miss Sandoval, just so you know, if you're just a sheep, or as we say here, sheeple, right? If like people sheep, right? If you're just following the media and you're just following your political party, or you're just following your friends, or you're just following the group, and you're not really thinking for yourself. Well, I'm talking to a bunch of business students, so you're thinking for yourself all the time because you're thinking of the next big thing. You're thinking about strategies. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. So my experience growing up, when I was about, early 20s, so about your age, I was a very good boxer. Okay, I know you're looking and thinking like, wow, he must have been good because look how handsome he is. He never got punched. No, I was really that good, right? No, but I was a very good boxer. And one of the boxing gyms I was at, actually, there was a world champion boxing out of that gym. But there were only 2 of us that were white. And the rest of the gym were these black athletes, right? But it didn't make any difference because you know what? We were all boxers. It didn't matter that we were all boxers and we all wanted to be the best we could be. We wanted to win. We trained together, and training as a boxer is the hardest physical thing you're ever going to do. So if you get the chance to do it and you want to get into shape, you're golden. Trust me, it will happen. Although you guys look like you're all in great shape anyway, and I'm insanely jealous. But if you're doing something as a team or in a community with a group of people and your goals are the same, then the focus for me was always on the goal. Right? Obviously, we know all individuals are different. We know we go bring all of our different things to the table, but I never got into and I just see a lot of this now, like people calling or calling people out and being catty, and and there's a word for it, begins with B. I'm not going to use it because we shouldn't use it, but we're really catty about things, right? I'm not going to use it, Miss Sandra, right? But they're adults, they know what I'm talking, right? And it's wrong. As in, it's the wrong strategy. It's a waste of energy. Look at what you're offering each other. Look at what you're all contributing to where you as a group want to go. Because there's no I in this. There is no I. I know it sounds trite, and there's no I in team. You're not going to get anywhere on your own. Okay? Wherever you go, you are going to rely on people around you. Okay? And guess what? People like to work with people who are likable. And not unlikable, right? So don't make yourself, don't do, so getting over, the race, we like to call it the race issue, I never had an issue with race. And maybe it could be you're white, you won't have an issue with race, but actually, I think white people are the people that have an issue with race. That's why it's an issue, right? If white people didn't have an issue with race, there wouldn't be race issues. But it was just something I don't know if it came from a bit of a Christian upbringing. I'm not a church goer. I don't follow the Bible or anything anymore. But all I ever took from anything was the bits that really mattered. And the golden rule is what matters. Treat someone as you'd like to be treated yourself. And that can be, sometimes I feel there can be a condescending piece to that, as in make allowances for that person. How would you feel if you were them? It never felt like that because I never felt that good in the first place. Right? So a lot of my humility came from the fact that it was genuine humility. It was like I never had anything to brag about because, like we all just said, I always walked into the room thinking that I was the one that was the odd one out. And it's a nice thing to have, because you have that humility there. You're not going to be the big mouth. You're not going to be seen as the bragger or the big head or the overconfident one, right? But balance, so many words. I could talk. I don't know if you could listen, but I could talk to you for 2 hours about this stuff.
I know, and I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you, Mr. Jenkins, because we're coming almost towards the end of your participation. But I would like to hear now from the students. We actually talked about some questions that they had for you, but now I don't know, they got shy or something and they just forget about the question. Yes, Michelle, thank you. We have a question from Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
I have a question. I have been waiting to ask to someone like you, Mr. Glyn. I grew up being Nahuvian. It means I grew up watching Doctor Who, that it's a TV show. But I grew up with that idea of like that culture, because my grandfather told me it was like that. How true or how well it's represented on a TV show, for example, that it's the media that like comes to Mexico or different parts of the world?
That's a very good question.
Doctor Who is like the wildest example you could have given, because that's like, you know, Daleks and all that kind of thing. And it's a sci-fi time travel. So here's the thing, you know, the thing about TV is it's always a snapshot of, actually that's not true, not always, let's not use always. But if you watch British TV, there's a snapshot of truth in there. There has to be truth in humor, especially in humor, right? There has to be an element of truth, otherwise it isn't funny because you don't make a connection to it. Okay, but there has to be a surprise twist to it as well. Can you give me any other TV shows that you might refer to? And then I know you're not being specific, but Doctor Who.
I was shocked about the fact, because I told them that you didn't know who the Beatles were, even though you were born in between Liverpool and Manchester. You were actually the topic in one of our previous classes that they couldn't believe it, you know? But it's interesting to know why.
Yeah, no, I can talk about that. No, the thing with TV shows is they have to be representative. Yeah, they have to represent some form of reality. Okay, so even Doctor Who, the English-speaking Doctor Who, is this wise kind of professor. Yeah, he represents that wisdom, but he's also the hero, right? He's also the protagonist of the piece, and he's a hero. So no matter what's going on around him, I mean, aspire to be him, right? Or her now. It's the female one. Is it still a female Doctor Who now? I'm not over there, right? So aspire to be him or her, right? Doctor Who is a great role model to, you know, how does he solve problems? How does she solve problems? How do they face adversity? You know, yes, it's a TV show, but so the Beatles is an interesting one because that's music as well. Most of my inspiration came from pop culture. Most of my inspiration to be, I want to say successful, but I'm a 5th grade school teacher. I don't know how successful that is. You know what I'm saying, right? Came from watching successful people, right? My favorite band is Queen, right? The rock band, because they're the best, right? If you find a band better than Queen, then let's watch both bands, right? But Queen are as good as you could get. You know, you can argue Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, you know, maybe, but they're all in that element of excellence. Okay. One of my favorite movie is Rocky. Okay. And there's a story behind that, but it's the little bits in there. It's the messages you get. So even Doctor Who, as sci-fi and as wild as it can be, the character of the Doctor might absolutely has got characteristics and traits that are worth picking out and saying, okay, applied in the real world, you know, you've not got a TARDIS. Won't we all love one of those, right? Either a TARDIS or a DeLorean from Back to the Future. One of those would be great, but we haven't got one. But can you have the traits of Doctor Who? Why not? Look at what it is about that character. So I'm using film and TV now as an influence, and I don't know if I'm actually answering your question as accurately as you want. But, you know, the Doctor Who is a very British stereotype, okay? But we're not all Doctor Who's and Harry Potters, right? There's a lot of Ron Weasleys out there. Weasley.
I'm so glad you're mentioning this, Glyn, because actually stereotyping is one of the main topics we talk about in class. And I'm also very, very happy that you have mentioned that. I am so sorry because we have almost come to the last part of your participation. So we only have time for one more question, and that will be it. So I don't know why my students are so shy right now. Usually they're very talkative, but now they're very shy. Anyway,
question.
Yes, go ahead with your question.
It's about what you said about the quote of Chandering. With the spread of coronavirus, there was a lot of hate shown to Asian people or people who had these characteristics. Like how it was from their perspective happening in the United States, like why the hate was like really big, or at least what I saw from Mexico, it was that it was really big, like they couldn't see each other in Spain.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Elisa, I didn't get your question very well. Are you asking about the coronavirus and the Asian people? But is that from the perspective of the US or from the British perspective? I don't understand. I'm sorry.
Yes, from a British perspective of a person who has been living a while in the United States.
Yeah, I can. You know, I'm going to sum this up at a conceptual level, and I really appreciate that this is a personal issue for you, but I think it extends beyond that, and it comes back to the culture of blame. You know, people, for some reason, some people or many people always feel that if they've got someone to blame, it's almost like a medicine for them. It's like they've relieved themselves of a pressure or a weight or something. It's like, oh, that's his fault, you know. And I can say that I've heard absolute ridiculous things about Donald Trump, right? I know I've not said anything negative about Donald Trump because I'm not going to say anything negative at all on this call, right? But I've heard ridiculous things where they've blamed him, and they blame politicians. He's the one around right now, so he's the only one I've got. But actually, in England, Boris Johnson, they blame Boris Johnson for them. It makes them feel. It makes people feel great. There's a sense of, I think, a sense of liberation of some sort, that I managed to relieve myself of that problem because it's their fault. And actually, sometimes things aren't really anyone. You know, it's an amalgamation of things. I haven't heard. I'll be really honest with you. I haven't heard any really cutting remarks or insults or blame towards I mean, I've heard it that it came from China. Okay, that's all I've heard, right? You know, in the same way I heard that HIV came from Africa. But no specific blame. You know, I hear more, to be honest, more conspiracy theories that this thing is more of a. And this is where I've been led to believe, you know, not led to believe, I don't believe it, I'm thinking about it, is, you know, is this some man-made virus to bring down governments? Is it, you know, and I'm asking questions here, but these are the questions that I'm hearing as much about, as in, I'm certainly not hearing a blame towards, I'm not even really hearing a blame towards China, but certainly not towards Asian people per se, because it's killing Asian people, you know? It's like, it's killing everyone, you know, it's affecting everyone. It's making people sick, people are dying from it, and whatever, again, this is one of these levelers, it doesn't matter what gender you are, what sexual orientation you are, what color skin you've got, this thing is affecting everyone. So I'm really not hearing a blame towards Asian people. But as you brought that up, I think it's important just to have that antenna, you know, just be aware all the time of how people do like to blame. There's I don't know if it's a power. I don't know enough about the concept of blame. It'd be an interesting field to look into. It must be a psychology field, I guess. But blame definitely makes some people feel better, and they like to do it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jenkins. Yes, I'm so sorry, but our time is up. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Help me please give Mr. Jenkins a hand, and thank you very much for sharing with us. And thank you. You may stay connected, or you may disconnect whenever you want, because now I have to welcome our next guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have 5th graders I have to go and teach, so I'll see you soon, okay? Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, now I'm going now